What is up, guys? Frosty Austy here today for another Frosty Features. Today, we have the final member of our Annihilators team, one of the, I believe, one of the OG characters in Marvel Strike Force. He is the OG Big Bad. He got a rework, and I thought it was time to clear the air about Ultimus. So what this is, if you haven't been here before, is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your guide. So, starting off, according to Scopely, blog posts did not exist when Ultimus was released in the game, so there isn't one. So this is the background that we are given on the Marvel Strike Force website. A Ultimus, a Kree warlord and eternal who generates overwhelming energy blasts and force fields. That's all we get. There is some more information on the Marvel Strike Force wiki, but since it's not from the original content and I have no way to prove whether one way or the other about the original content, it's very hard to actually make a solid judgment from that. So this is what we have. We usually rate this at the end. This is a little unfair to rate. We'll still give it a rating, but it's a little unfair because the blog post didn't exist, etc. back then. But one thing that we're definitely going to see is this version of Ultimus is quite different than its comic book counterpart. But what I do like with this Ultimus that we're going to be talking about a lot of the recent Frosty Features, we have talked about how Marvel Strike Force's lore is based on other lore, so it still counts no matter what anybody says, right? Ultimus is legitimately, if you look into his MSF origins, the way that they set it up legitimately is set. It says in Marvel Strike Force canon, it is all based off of a specific Earth, and that Earth is based off another Earth, which is the comic books. That is part of the Marvel lore. It is in the wiki. This is the definitive answer to the other content creators that want to freaking disagree. I didn't actually realize that until I started reading about it. We will talk about that. Ultimus! So this is actually what Ultimus looks like in Marvel 616. As a reminder, Marvel 616 is the main canon continuity for the comic books. 616 is what the movies claim to be with their mouths, but that's not true. Marvel movies have official designation of 159999, right? And Marvel 616 is the canon comic book line, so they are not the same thing. The MCU kind of feeds off of the actual 616 canon. They just misidentified it in many of the movies now for legitimately no reason but to anger comic book lovers. Ultimus. So name is Ard Khan. First appearance is all the way back in 1972 in Thor number 209. So, a lot of the characters that we talk about that come from the 70s, they have a huge history in appearance in comic books. Ultimus is only in 2 story arcs at all that I'm aware of up until the recording date of this. So, up until this date in 2024. Ultimus is only in 2 comic book arcs that has to do with the 616. He's in a couple more arcs, but for the most part, he's a side character. He very much is just referenced offhand, but he's very strong. Powers and abilities, superhuman. He is beyond the human capabilities in every way: super speed, super strength, reflexes, intelligence, etc. Energy manipulation. This is a very important one. So this is what gives him the ability to use energy blasts and create force fields. And then he has some molecular manipulation. We see this as a popular thing among Eternals, that they have some form of molecular kind of control of their own being, and that's what Ultimus has. Aside from Cersei actually having full molecular manipulation powers, Ultimus does have, to some degree, this is how he has a healing regenerative factor, things like that. This actually comes from his source of molecular manipulation, but it is not to the degree of like Cersei. We also do see Ultimus grab some people and turn them to stone, which is something we see Cersei do in the comics. There's a whole arc about that too. But with Ultimus, in the very small amount of time we get to see him as a character, these are the powers that he exhibits and are the exact ones that are shown by Marvel Strike Force. Also, once we start talking about the lore, in game we don't actually ever hear him called Ard Khan. To my knowledge, he's always Ultimus, but on the Marvel Strike Force wiki, it does refer to him as Ardcon, which is a reference to the 616 counterpart. Therefore, right there being proof in and of itself that Ultimus in the game is based on the 616 counterpart, Ardcon. I'm very excited to be able to deliver this news because it is in fact definitive, I believe. Alias is Demon Druid. So when Ultimus is first introduced into the comic books as Ardcon, his actual name that people call him by is Demon Druid for a long period of time until, not a long period of time, it is a long period of time. It's for like 20 years, but he's not in the he disappears. And we'll talk about that. We're going to go over his entire comic book history because he's got so little, right? But, so, before he's known as Ultimus, much like how Captain America becomes Nomad and then becomes Captain America again, or U.S. Agent becomes Captain America, people taking up different titles, his original title was Demon Druid. So, essentially, for half of the run of comic books he is present in, he is known as the Demon Druid. Affiliation! So, he is a part of the Kree Empire. He is, and the Kree eventually gets pulled into the Shi'ar. We talked about Shi'ar quite a bit in Frosty features Thanos Endgame. So yes, we talked about the Shi'ar quite a bit. So check that out. But in this situation, Ultimus is directly related to the Kree becoming a part of the Shi'ar, so that's something to keep in mind. And then he does have Kree heritage. So what his background, he's born on Kree Lar. He's created on Kree Lar. He is a Kree Eternal. So what this is the Celestials are the ones, we talked about this quite a bit in Frosty Features Thanos as well. And probably Icarus and Cersei way back in the day, if you go back and check those out. The Celestials create the Eternals. Essentially, they're experimenting to see if they can make more powerful beings. So they start mixing Eternals with natural, like they would go to planets and they would become the Celestial would become the host of the planet, and then they would try to mix Eternals with the races on those planets. So there is a small race of Kree Eternals that kind of navigate the spaceways in search of different and better places to live, etc. The Eternals are an expansive bunch, just trying to check out what's out there, essentially. So Ultimus is from a race of Kree Eternals. Who died? The Kree Eternals. So one of the big things that we find, especially for Ultimus to become Ultimus, once again, he was Demon Druid at first. So as Ardcon, he's the Eternal going around, and then he ends up in a stasis situation for a long period of time and emerges and is known as the Demon Druid. He doesn't speak at this time. He chooses not to, and he is dubbed Demon Druid. He does not go by that right away. And then he is given the title of Ultimus. This is because of him. One of the things being that he learns that his entire race is wiped out. So the Kree Eternals no longer exist. He is the final one, right? So for him to become Ultimus, this needs to happen. And who died was because you cannot be a Marvel Comics, you cannot be a comic hero or villain without somebody dying, right? Bigger than he looks. So even in this picture right here, he looks like just like some regular dude, but he is actually supposedly 8'6" tall, depending on the artist who's drawing him. But more often than not, he looks like a regular proportioned dude, but at a much bigger size. Think size-wise, much more similar to that of Thanos in certain versions of the Hulk, just like height-wise. He's definitely a huge character, right? So that's something just to keep in mind as it goes on. It was really hard to find good trivia for him because he's only involved in, like I said, 2 story arcs in the span of what is it now? 50 years? Yeah. Alright, so let's talk about this really quick. So, Marvel Strike Force, this is the other definitive, hey, everybody else, this is proof that the comic book lore counts in Marvel Strike Force. And this is something that, one, I didn't need to bring up in a Frosty feature until now, but Ultimus is the original big bad. The whole story of Marvel Strike Force hinges on Ultimus, right? So, the way it works is Marvel Strike Forces uses, so the whole thing is that it's multiversal, right? All of the battles and stuff, the idea is that our teams are coming from different Earth designation. I can fight, my Thor can fight your Thor because they are from 2 different realities. So the base of the game is that this is an alternate universe Ultimus. Listen to what I just said there. It is an alternate universe Ultimus. That is the base of this game, which means since it's an alternate universe with an Earth designation, Earth 21184, acknowledged by the comics, which is dictated by Earth 616. Therefore, Earth 78149, which is the current reality. So in Earth 21184, this is a multiverse where Ultimus decides he is going to conquer the multiverse. So he conquers that universe, and then we find him in Earth 78149, which is the Nexus Earth of that reality. So in 78149, that is the base reality for Marvel Strike Force, which, because of its Earth designation, official, not TRN. TRN is temporary reality number. That's not a TRN. That's an official designation by the comic books. Earth 78149. Because there's an official designation, that means that that version of Earth is also based off of Earth 616, which is main continuity. All other arguments are invalid. Marvel Strike Force lore is based off of Earth 616, according to Marvel Strike Force. There it is. I've been arguing it for a while, but that is from the Marvel Wiki, that is from the Marvel Strike Force Wiki, and the website. That's the end of it right there. And I know it won't be, and they're going to keep saying it because they don't watch these videos, but I want you to know this is the definitive right here. My argument I keep making in all the Frosty features, that's the end. That is the proof. The proof is in the pudding. That is not opinion, that is fact. So I'm going to keep complaining because it's not going to do anything, but here's my base. Here's my nexus point, right? I will always refer back to Frosty Features Ultimus. Here we are. Relationships, none known. My man's only been in 2 comic book arcs. And everybody's dead. And if you look up Kree Eternals, he's the only one that's referenced, right? Very, very little is known actually about Ultimus. Actually, as far as Frosty Features goes, he may be one of the ones that has the least amount of information about him, period. Which is super crazy. Origin. So, as we said, we have Ultimus is from the race, so we're going to talk about his entire comic book existence right here, and it's not that long. He is from a race created by Celestials of Kree Eternals. We don't actually see the Kree Eternals. We know that they existed. So, his origins start where we don't actually know when he's created, but his origin story starts 4,000 years before modern Marvel continuity. And 4,000 years, that 4,000 years ago, what happens is the Kree Eternals are traveling the spaceways and they find Earth and they live on Earth for a short period of time. In this time, they are prosperous or whatever, but the Kree Eternals want to move on, and our man Ultimus decides that's not his way, so everybody moves on and he decides to stay behind. This is not uncommon with the Eternals, regular Eternals, let alone the Kree Eternals, right? So this is just a common occurrence that happens. So in this, he's staying on Earth for a while, and so when the Celestials create Eternals, they also have been creating Deviants, which are essentially forms of mutated Eternals, kind of. They're the anti-Eternal. And so in this, Ultimus comes into conflict with a deviant known as Tantalus, and at the end of the day of this battle, Tantalus kicks the living crap out of him. And in doing so, as a reminder, we talked about this a lot in Frosty Features Thanos. That apparently was very important to this one. Eternals are immortal unless killed, and even when they're killed, they get reborn through the Great Machine. The Great Machine is not an aspect of the Kree Eternals. They would have had to invent it or something, but there is no indication that that's a thing. And since his entire race gets wiped out, and as far as I'm aware, we're not sure why they get wiped out. It's just he is just informed that they're all dead, right? So they are immortal, but something killed them all. So with that, he gets put into stasis. He gets put into essentially a sleep for thousands of years underneath England, of all places. And eventually what happens is Donald Blake goes and he's traveling around England doing Avenger things, and he cracks his cane against the ground to turn into Thor to save some people and save the day. And what happens is we have Ard Khan resting under the earth, wake up from his slumber, having only one mission: to get back to his home. Because essentially, you know, he went to sleep and be like, oh, I just got my butt kicked, I need to go get some reinforcements, right? So he's like, I need to get home. So he wakes up and he's like, I'm gonna get home. And what Thor sees, he's like, hey, big blue man, hey, who are you? What are you doing here? And Ard Khan's like, you're not worth my time. I'm not gonna talk. He doesn't say anything. He just doesn't speak, right? This is what I was talking about earlier. He just chooses not to speak. He does not return Thor's situation. He doesn't say anything. He's just like, I'm gonna go home. So he starts making a beeline for Stonehenge, and Thor's like, you're big, you're blue, you're an enemy because you're not talking. So I don't know why you're going to Stonehenge, but you and I, we are not equals. And Thor goes to fight him, and Ultimus shames him in front of his family, in front of God and everyone. Ultimus beats the crap out of Thor, and Thor gets knocked out, and Ultimus is pretty much like, all right, so I'm glad that we did that. That was fun. I'm gonna keep going. So he keeps on his move to Stonehenge, and Thor returns with some buddies. He ends up fighting the entire British army along the way. All of them are attacking because he is refusing to kind of convey what he's doing. But ultimately, so he goes through that. He fights the British army, and Thor comes back, and he's able to knock out Ultimus on the second round with a little bit of prep time and some reinforcements. And in knocking out Ultimus, he's taken to the Scottish Yard, and it's essentially deduced that all he's trying to do is get home. He's not really concerned about anything else, right? He doesn't care about humans. He doesn't care about, Asgardians. He has no ill will towards anybody, essentially, at this point. He has one goal, and that's to get home, right? So in this, essentially it was just like, hey, he's being attacked for no freaking reason, right? So essentially the end of this is them deciding, oh, you know what, it's fine, you can go home. And so he goes to Stonehenge, and he converts Stonehenge into like this teleporting portal kind of situation, and they let him leave, and he goes back to Krelar. Well, he gets there, so that's the end of the first story arc he's in. So technically there's more than 2 story arcs, I guess. That's the end of the first story arc he's in, and then number 2, we find out when he gets to Krelar, everybody's gone, right? He doesn't necessarily know that they're dead, but he knows that they're not there. So his whole thing now is that he doesn't want to go home. He needs to locate his people, right? Krelar's empty, and so he creates a teleporter to go back to Earth so that he can create a stronger version of the Stonehenge teleporter so that he can locate his people and teleport himself there. But because of the amount of power, so he ends up doing this at the Darkmoor Nuclear Research Facility, and in doing that, it is assumed that in creating this extra Stonehenge situation, that the power needed to create the thing after the portal is open, it's going to destroy Earth, right? So Excalibur is called out to Excalibur's called out to mitigate the situation, and in doing so, and this part, it's not even about Ultimus, it's really about Captain Britain. So at this point in time with Excalibur, Captain Britain's acting out quite a bit, and he's sort of being a mega aggressor. So we have the most notable players in the story are Phoenix, Shadowcat, and Captain Britain. So at the end of the day, he goes to this Darkmoor research facility and starts making a virtual Stonehenge that has enough power to send him there. And essentially the threat is he will destroy the Earth so that he can get where he's going. And Shadowcat but they know that that's what his goals are. There's a couple altercations with him beforehand. But they know that that's his end goal, and Shadowcat kind of sympathizes with him. And so Shadowcat gets to Phoenix and like, hey Phoenix, like, can we just get this guy home? Like, yes, there's a threat, but he doesn't necessarily he doesn't really necessarily know that what the cost. He doesn't see it, but his intentions, what he wants, is fair. He just wants to find his people. Like, I get it. And Phoenix is like, yeah, I can help him with that. And they're like, wait, where's Brian? And Brian was like, I just took a lot of steroids and I'm pissed, so I'm flying to Darkmoor and I'm gonna kick the crap out of Ultimus. Ardcon, he's not Ultimus. He's the demon druid at this point. Still. So he's flying over there, and things are about to get real heated, and Phoenix shows up and stops him, and she's like, listen, if you go in there, you're gonna destroy that whole facility. You might not even win the fight. He's super strong. We don't know what's going on. Maybe you should just let me deal with this. And Phoenix fights Brian Braddock and is able to back him off, fight him off in such a way. Phoenix is significantly stronger Captain Britain. Fights him off and calms him down long enough so that she can turn around and be like, yo, Ultimus, Ardcon, Demon Druid, hey, you're just trying to find your people, right? I am a universal being, and I can tell where your people are, and I will send you to the Kree. And he was like, great, you can send me to the Kree? Let's do that. And so Phoenix is just like, all right, cool, no one's gonna die, check this out, portal, and it helps him with the situation, sends him on his merry way, and then he gets to where he's going, and he meets the Kree, right? The Kree. This is where he runs into the Kree the Supreme Intelligence of the Kree, and the Supreme Intelligence tells him a couple very important facts. Number one, there is no more Kree Eternals. They were killed off. He is the only one remaining. Supreme Intelligence also says you are no longer the Demon Druid, as the Earthlings call you. You are Ultimus, as you are the ultimate Kree being, and you'll be instrumental to the Kree's race becoming amazing. And so at this point, Ultimus, we finally get the moniker of Ultimus, but we don't see him for like 20 years until the Galactic Storm storyline, which is the Shi'ar Kree War, right? The Kree Galactic War, whatever. So we lose. This was the set that, and actually, that's not even true. Actually, I just misspoke. We first see the Thor storyline in the 70s. The Excalibur storyline is in 1992. So directly after he gets to the Supreme Intelligence is like, yo, we're about to take out the Shi'ar. You're gonna be amazing in this situation. Thank you for showing up. I love having a superpowered individual, and you're gonna be so important, right? Well, not really, right? So we go to Galactic Storm, and Ultimus just becomes a side character in this group called Star Force. So, what's going on in Galactic Storm? The Supreme Intelligence is like, you know what's a good idea? I am the Supreme Intelligence of the Kree, which means I know better than everybody else. So check this out. I'm gonna take this. It's like if you take nuclear and take it like 5 steps up, they've got this thing called the Nega Bomb. And he's like, I'm gonna use this Nega Bomb, and I'm gonna blow it up on the Kree. And because of the intense radiation and the powers of this bomb, it's gonna push the evolution of the Kree like 5 steps further, and everyone's gonna become so much stronger because I'm gonna bomb our own people. This is a great idea. So what I'm gonna do, not only in this, the Shi'ar is trying to spread like this form of control, government, and goodness over everybody. So we're gonna fight the Shi'ar because they have the Nega Bomb, and I'm gonna make my own Avengers team called Star Force. So he gets this fun group right here, which is Ultimus, Korath the Pursuer. He's got he's got Deathbird, Ultimus, Korath the Pursuer, Captain Atlas. And let's see, was there anybody else? Those are kind of the main ones. Yeah, all that Minerva in Marvel Strike Force. Dr. Minerva's in there. She's right. You can see her in the red in the picture. Anyway, assembles the Star Force and he's like, you are my elite squad, right? So on behalf of the Shi'ar at this point, we have the Avengers kind of operating. So what they're trying to do is kind of, the war's going on, the Kree are trying to get this Nega Bomb, and the Nega Bomb disappears, and the Avengers are kind of out, trying to take care of the Kree or whatever, and so the Supreme Intelligence sends out, there's also, at the same time, there's like this big civil war, so there's a big thing whether or not the Kree are backing the Supreme Intelligence. So there's a point where so this Star Force and the Avengers get into a fight. And this is really important. So with Ultimus, once again, is acting as a side character heavily in this storyline. So Ultimus ends up 1v1ing Hercules. So this is actually really important for power level a little bit later. But Ultimus ends up 1v1ing Hercules, which is one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe, and he actually is able to solo him. So Ultimus does take out Hercules, and Star Force actually takes out the Avengers. But then all of a sudden, the heads of the Kree, the leaders of the Kree that are kind of against the Supreme Intelligence, Aldon and Gar Ben, they show up and they're like, yo, stop. And they put them in 2 force fields. And they're like, you know what? We're going to kill both of you because you're just kind of in our way. We don't want to be part of the Shi'ar Empire, and we don't want the Supreme Intelligence doing his thing. So all of you are going to die. And Deathbird, who happens to have not been in the force field, kind of comes out of nowhere and is like, assassinate, and takes them both out and kind of frees them both. So in this, the Supreme Intelligence kind of comes back into the fold and is like, yo, we're controlling this. Things are going to go the way that I want. It's going to be amazing. So we have the Nega Bomb. Star Force, you go and assassinate the heads of the Shi'ar Empire. And they all kind of get away and do their separate things. And so the Star Force shows up in the Shi'ar kind of headquarters, and Ultimus runs in, and he's like, yo, I'm here to wreck things. I'm here to kill you, Liliandra. Once again, Charles Xavier's love thing. She's the head of the Shi'ar Empire a lot of the time. We talked about it in Frosty Features Gladiator. So he's like, I'm going to take you out. And Star Fox, once again, Frosty Features Thanos, Star Fox, Thanos' brother, is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So they end up fighting each other for a long time. So this is an Eternal, a true child of Eternals, debatably stronger than Eternals, very, very Thanos level character, Star Fox. Maybe not. I still think Thanos would beat Star Fox. They do fight each other quite a bit, so Thanos does beat him, but close, right? Very, very strong character. Ultimus is able to 1v1 Star Fox. It's a bit more of a stalemate than it was with Hercules, but he does and end up losing to it. But anyway, so with that, it gets kind of down to it, and it comes down, and they're like, all right, the Shi'ar, we're gonna absorb the Kree. It's like they're gonna win. We're gonna absorb the Kree, and the Star Force are going to die because they are Kree defectors. And at the same time, the Supreme Intelligence is like, okay, essentially got the Nega Bomb ready, and it's like, okay, well, what are we gonna do about this? And Supreme Intelligence is like, well, I got the bomb to blow it up on my own people. We're gonna blow it up on my own people. It's gonna make them so strong. It's gonna be so cool. And then millions die. He essentially just wipes the planet of Kree. He kills almost all of them. And from this, because of their weakened state, and the Supreme Intelligence is like, yeah, I'm gonna shut up for a bit. The Shi'ar are like, all right, we're gonna absorb the Kree. You're going to be a part of us now. And this is when they become considered, defectors and traitors to the Kree, because they sided with the Supreme Intelligence and did the assassination attempt on the Shi'ar. So all of the people in Star Force were banned, but not, banished, whatever. And, but they were not killed. And since then, we have never seen Ultimus in a comic book since then. So, over 30 years later, we have not seen 616 Ultimus in a comic book, right? Like I said, there are a couple other arcs in different realities with Ultimus, but he very much is playing a minor character. One of the really cool things about the difference between 616 Ultimus and our Marvel Strike Force designated Ultimus is, I really think the design of the Marvel Strike Force one is cooler, and he just looks so neat. And he's much more intense in his purpose, whereas this Ultimus really just kind of was like, he just kind of wanted to survive, more or less, and he got kind of roped into all the bad stuff that his people were doing. He very much was a byproduct of other people's moves. So just really important thing to keep in consideration when it comes to the actual 616 Ultimus. And then power level. Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power levels, but here on the Frosty Features, we do. Now, the way that this works, if you are a multiversal threat, you can end all the multiverse at a whim. You could topple it as it goes. All realities fall to your will. Universal means you can end your reality, perhaps hop on over to another one, and end that one, taking the multiverse down one at a time. Cosmic means that you are a threat at the small end on a planetary scale, being able to take out small planetary bodies, and with enough time and effort, maybe leveling something like a solar system or a galaxy. Nuclear means that your power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, starting on the low end to taking out things like small cities, all the way up to a small planetary body. Super Soldier means that you are beyond all human capabilities in every single way, being able to level things like brick walls or city blocks with enough time. City means that you are essentially a human being that is trained to the absolute and utter peak level that is human being. This is, think Olympic athletes. This is where a lot of our ninjas, our mercenaries, our secret agents, things like that in Marvel kind of live. Peak human being right there. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and without his team of undying characters or Hela, Greg is not much to deal with ever, left to his own devices. So for the sake of argument and undead Asgardian physiology, we are going to equate Greg equal to that of a regular human being. So if I'm just out on a hike, me as a Frosty Osty out on the trail alone, armed with my camera and imagination, I'm taking pictures, I'm bird watching, I'm finding the rare Marvel Strike Force warbler, and all of a sudden I'm trying to set up in the spot where I hear they nest, and I get there and all of Greg's stuff is just in my way, and I become absolutely irate and enraged that Greg and his stuff is just in my way of taking a picture of this beautiful warbler. And we go to blows, right? And I beat him and I throw him off a cliff and I bury his body and his gear, so no one will ever find him out in there. And I take all the pictures of the MSF Warbler and I become famous because of this beautiful, beautiful picture of this. I, theoretically, as a regular human being, could take out Greg. That's the end of that. And in the case of Ultimus, what we have, so essentially, Ultimus is one of the Eternals, right? He's like a different iteration of Eternals. He's a different race of Eternals. In fact, he is a race the race that his Eternals version is based on are inherently stronger than humans, right? So, Ultimus is crazy strong, even though he's not shown in much of Marvel Comics or continuity. He does deserve to be very strong. He is, and once again, he's fighting people like Hercules, who very much is Thor level, or Star Fox, who is debatably Thanos level. So this very, very firmly cements him in the cosmic level of, and this is just strength, y'all. He also has energy projection. He can manipulate energy, blasts, force fields, things like that. Literally just on his base strength alone, he's that strong that he could be in a cosmic level. Maybe on a strength level, debatably nuclear, but all these additional things, he is able to render things like planets just dust, right? Because when you look at kind of the cosmology, the cosmological hierarchy, I guess, the Eternals are one step above gods, the demigods, right? Like a Thor, right? So he really is that strong, and he totally is deserving to be a big bad at the base level. When we first got Marvel Strike Force, that's totally a legitimate designation. And the fact that they were able to pull such a random, obscure character and make him kind of that figurehead and still be able to justify the powers, actually very impressive, especially considering some of the story things that Marvel Strike Force has done throughout the ages. So with that, I honestly think they did that character a lot of justice. According to Scopely, no blog post, that's what we get right there. There are campaigns totally dedicated to this version of Ultimus. But all that to say, we don't really count this. It's not a true blog post. It doesn't give enough. But with that, I think that Marvel Strike Force did justice and more with the character of Ultimus as far as lore goes. He was definitely underserved for years, and now he's finally back in the meta, which is really fantastic. And even though maybe I as a player haven't been enjoying it so much, I think for the game, Ultimus deserves to be a character that is meta-able, right? So at least viable in at least one game mode, and right now he's kind of all over the place, which is great. So that is Frosty Features Ultimus. I hope that you all have a good time. Please let me know in the comments your favorite Ultimus moments, be them from any Marvel reality there is, or especially what they're all based on. Marvel 616, this is the one, kids. As a reminder, I stream on Sundays, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time at the link above, where we do Frosty Features live. I hope that you all enjoyed this. Please be sure to like and share and subscribe to this on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend, and most importantly, stay cool.